You're watching a senator celebrate passing a housing bill with 89 votes while calling it the biggest affordability package in 30 years. Elizabeth Warren just stood on the Senate floor and declared victory over the housing crisis, praising bipartisan cooperation and thanking her Republican partner Tim Scott for making it all possible. This sounds like genuine progress until you look at what the bill actually does, and more importantly, what it doesn't do. Warren frames this as a landmark solution, removing regulatory barriers, rewarding communities that build, stopping private equity from buying single-family homes, and helping first-time buyers. She says the median age of a first-time homebuyer just hit 40 years old, that housing is a retirement plan, that ownership affects everything from jobs to schools to generational wealth. All true. The crisis is real, the stakes are massive, but here's what she buries in the celebration. This bill doesn't cap rent. It doesn't limit home prices. It doesn't directly build affordable housing at scale. It streamlines permits, incentivizes construction, and creates funding mechanisms for local infrastructure. Those are helpful, but they're supply-side tweaks to a market failure that requires structural intervention. What you're about to hear is how a real housing crisis gets addressed with procedural improvements marketed as transformation, and why 89 Senate votes don't guarantee anyone will be able to afford a home.
President, and I want to say congratulations and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
That we just passed a housing bill with 89 senators in favor of it. You know, this is a bill about increasing supply, and anybody who wants to try to block this bill is going to have to explain to the American people why they don't want to see us build more housing and have that housing in the hands of homeowners to make that happen. So thank you very much, Mr. President, for all you've done and for your leadership to get us here. You know, our nation is in a full-blown housing crisis. Across rural communities, small towns, suburban neighborhoods, and major cities, home prices are sky high, rent is through the roof, and just last year, the median age of a first-time home buyer hit 40 years old. Housing is the single biggest purchase that most Americans will make in their lifetimes, but it is far more than that. Owning a home means building economic security. It's the #1 retirement plan for families across the country. Pay off your home and live on your Social Security. It helps people have the financing to start small businesses in their communities. And it is the main asset that families can pass down from one generation to the next. Owning a home affects the jobs you can get, the schools your children can attend, and the kind of communities you can live in. But for too long, the federal government has been asleep at the switch while the crisis grows. Hundreds of thousands of families are priced out of homes by private equity. Many state and local governments have too many rules holding back housing construction. Young people cannot buy their first homes. Seniors and veterans are being left behind. Homeownership is out of the reach of too many families, especially Black families. We need to act. And that is why I stand here today in support of the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. This landmark bipartisan bill will help tackle the root cause of this crisis by getting more homes built in every community across this country. It will make sure that families own those homes, not giant corporations looking to jack up the rent and squeeze every nickel of profit they can out of American families. House Republicans should immediately take up this bill and pass it. If they do not, they will have to explain to families across this country in November why they refuse to lower the cost of housing. This is the biggest package of bills to make housing affordable in 30 years. This bill has more than 40 provisions, every single one of which is designed to help increase housing supply and bring down housing costs. Here are just a few of the things this bill will do. It removes regulatory barriers and streamlines environmental reviews to speed up affordable housing development and construction approval processes. It rewards communities that build more housing, and it prods those that are not building to step up and build more. It strengthens the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and the home programs to get more affordable housing built and to permanently authorize the CDBG disaster recovery program to get more money out to disaster-stricken communities faster. It makes it easier and cheaper to build new manufactured housing by removing the outdated chassis requirements, bringing down the cost of a new unit by up to $10,000. It creates an innovation fund, one that I've been proposing for years, to reward communities that are successfully building more housing with new funding for community infrastructure or even to build more housing. It will make long-needed improvements to rural housing programs to preserve affordable housing for 400,000 rural families. It offers new and streamlined funding opportunities for cities and towns to bolster local infrastructure and to convert abandoned buildings into new housing, for homeowners and landlords to make structural home repairs, and for home builders to finance new manufactured and modular housing. And there's so much more in this bill. This bill supports more housing opportunities for veterans. It takes action to reduce homelessness, and it helps address appraisal bias. And finally, this bill takes a good first step to get single-family homes back into the hands of American families, not corporations. An overwhelming majority of Americans across party lines want to stop private equity from snapping up single-family homes, and this bill does exactly that. It also makes sure that corporate landlords who don't follow the law pay up, and it invests any money they pay in fines into the home program to build more housing and to help first-time home buyers with direct assistance for down payments, closing costs, and interest rate buy-downs. The bill does another thing that is very important. It preserves the power of state and local communities to tackle the problem of corporate landlords making it harder for families to afford rent and to own a home. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act has overwhelming bipartisan support. It includes the vast majority of bipartisan housing provisions that passed the House of Representatives, and the bill has strong support from the White House. Americans have been clear that they want their leaders to focus on lowering costs. There is no excuse to delay this relief. The American people will be watching. I want to say thank you to Senator Tim Scott for his partnership in this historic bill. His leadership made this bill possible, and I am grateful to work with him on an issue that will matter so much to so many families. I also want to note that every single member of the Banking Committee, Republicans and Democrats, added ideas and specific provisions that made it into this bill. I thank them for their thoughtful and creative contributions, and thank them for helping make this a much stronger, better bill. I also want to offer a very special thank you to the local and state officials, including the mayors across Massachusetts and all around the country, who helped shape this bill and then who raised their voices to help get it passed. I also want to thank the advocates who have worked tirelessly to push for more and better housing all across America. So, let's get this bill to the House. Let's get it signed into law as quickly as possible. There's no time to spare. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
What Senator Warren did on that Senate floor wasn't dishonest, but it was incomplete in ways that matter. She presented the 21st Century Road to Housing Act as a solution to the housing crisis when it's actually a set of mechanisms to make building easier. Those are not the same thing, and understanding the difference tells you why 89 senators can vote yes, while millions of families still won't be able to afford rent or a mortgage. Start with the framing. Warren opens by calling this a full-blown housing crisis, and she's right. Home prices are sky high. Rent is unaffordable. The median first-time buyer is now 40 years old. She connects housing to economic security, retirement planning, generational wealth, access to schools and jobs. All accurate. The problem is real and urgent. But then she pivots to the solution. Remove regulatory barriers, streamline environmental reviews, reward communities that build more, strengthen block grants, eliminate manufactured housing chassis requirements. These are process improvements. They make it easier for developers to build. They don't guarantee that what gets built will be affordable or that families can access it. Here's the core issue. The housing crisis has two components: supply and price. Warren's bill addresses supply by removing friction in the construction pipeline. Faster permits, fewer zoning restrictions, more funding for infrastructure that supports development. That's useful. But it doesn't touch the price side. It doesn't cap rents. It doesn't mandate affordability requirements. It doesn't build public housing at scale. It assumes that if you increase supply, prices will naturally fall. That's textbook market theory. But housing markets don't behave like widget markets because housing is also an investment asset, a store of wealth, and a speculative commodity. Investors buy properties not to live in them but to extract value. Corporate landlords purchase single-family homes to turn them into rental income streams. That demand doesn't disappear just because supply increases. Warren does address corporate landlords, and this is the bill's strongest provision. It takes a good first step to get single-family homes back into the hands of families, not corporations. It makes corporate landlords who break the law pay fines, and it invests those fines into down payment assistance. That's meaningful. But it's also limited. The bill doesn't ban private equity from buying homes. It doesn't create a federal right of first refusal for individual buyers. It doesn't impose vacancy taxes on investors holding properties off-market. It creates penalties for bad actors and redirects the revenue. That helps on the margins. It doesn't restructure the market. Then there's the community reward mechanism. The bill rewards cities that build more housing and prods those that don't to step up. This sounds good until you ask, rewarded with what, and at whose expense? If federal funding goes to municipalities that approve more development, you create an incentive to prioritize construction over community input. That can lead to displacement, gentrification, and the destruction of affordable existing housing to make room for market-rate units. Warren mentions preserving affordable housing for 400,000 rural families, which is important. But preservation and new construction are different challenges, and this bill leans heavily toward the latter. The environmental review streamlining is another area where the rhetoric needs scrutiny. Warren frames this as removing red tape. But environmental reviews exist to assess whether development harms ecosystems, displaces communities, or worsens infrastructure strain. Streamlining those reviews can speed up construction. It can also greenlight projects that create long-term costs for the communities that live with them. The bill doesn't explain how it balances speed with accountability. What's also missing is any discussion of who builds the housing and who profits. Streamlining regulations and increasing funding for developers doesn't guarantee those developers will prioritize affordability. Market-rate housing will get built faster, luxury condos will go up, but affordable units require subsidies, mandates, or public construction. This bill creates conditions for more building. It doesn't specify that the building must serve low and middle-income families. Warren closes by saying there's no excuse to delay relief and that the American people are watching. But relief isn't the same as reform. Relief would be rent caps, mortgage assistance, tenant protections, and public housing construction. This bill offers regulatory efficiency and financial incentives. Those can help, but they're mechanisms, not guarantees. 89 senators voted yes because this bill doesn't threaten real estate investors, doesn't challenge landlord profits, and doesn't redistribute housing as a public good. It makes the market work faster. It doesn't change who the market serves. If you care about housing justice, support this bill as a step, not a solution. Demand the next step, policies that treat housing as a human right, not just a commodity. Because until we do that, supply-side tweaks will keep building wealth for those who already own property while the crisis continues for those locked out.